In 15 minutes, you'll discover why every discipline method you've tried has failed, and how 3 adjustments Carl Rogers used with his clients can turn your routine into autopilot. If you've ever wondered why you can stay motivated for a few days and then everything falls apart, if you've felt like you're fighting against yourself every time you try to build a new habit, or if you've noticed your mind seems to sabotage exactly what you want the most, then you need to understand what Rogers discovered about the real functioning of human discipline. The truth is, you're not failing because you lack willpower. You're failing because you're using a system that goes against the fundamental nature of your mind. Carl Rogers, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, discovered something revolutionary. Genuine discipline doesn't come from brute force against ourselves, but from creating the right conditions for our natural tendency toward growth to work in our favor. And this happens mostly on an unconscious level. Think about the last time you tried to change something important in your life. Maybe it was waking up earlier, exercising regularly, studying consistently, or stopping procrastination. On the first day, you were full of energy and determination. On the second day, you still managed to keep up the pace. But at some point during that first week, that internal voice started saying that today could be an exception, that you'd make up for it tomorrow, that maybe your goal was too ambitious. And without even noticing, you were back to your old patterns. This happens because there's a silent war going on inside your mind. On one side, you have your conscious goals, the things you've rationally decided you want to do. On the other side, you have a whole unconscious system of beliefs, fears, and automatic patterns built over years. And here's the problem. When those two systems aren't aligned, when there's what Rogers called incongruence, your unconscious mind always wins. Most discipline methods focus exclusively on the conscious side. They tell you to have more willpower, make lists, use apps, set bigger or smaller goals. But they never touch the real problem, the unconscious conflict that's sabotaging all your efforts. It's like trying to drive a car with the handbrake on. No matter how much you press the accelerator, you're not going anywhere. Rogers discovered that the key isn't forcing change through conscious discipline, but creating what he called facilitating conditions. When these conditions are present, change happens naturally, almost effortlessly. And the most fascinating part is that these conditions can be installed directly in your environment and routine, functioning as a form of discipline, subliminal. I'll show you exactly how to do this through 3 practical steps that turn any environment into an automatic system of personal growth. These are not temporary tricks or superficial techniques. They are methods based on decades of research into how the human mind actually works, and how we can work with it, not against it. The first step is what I call the unconditional acceptance environment. Rogers discovered that people can only genuinely change when they feel accepted exactly as they are, without judgment or external pressure. But here's the genius part. You can create this feeling of unconditional acceptance through specific modifications in your physical environment. Start by identifying the place where you most need discipline. It could be your work desk, your study corner, or even your bed, if the challenge is waking up early. Now I'll give you 3 concrete modifications you can make in that space to turn it into a zone of unconditional acceptance. First modification. Eliminate all elements that represent pressure or judgment. This includes visible to-do lists, reminders of what you didn't do yesterday, photos of ideal versions of yourself, or any object that carries the energy of, you should be doing better. Your unconscious mind registers these elements as threats, activating defense mechanisms that include procrastination and self-sabotage. Second modification. Introduce elements that represent gradual and organic growth. A growing plant, a stack of books you genuinely want to read arranged in a welcoming way, or objects that symbolically represent future versions of yourself in an inspiring, non-pressuring way. The difference is subtle but powerful. Instead of, you should be like this, the environment communicates, you are naturally becoming this. Third modification. Create what Rogers would call an empathetic entry ritual. Before starting any activity that requires discipline, pause for 30 seconds and ask yourself a specific question. How am I feeling right now, and what do I need to feel supported at this moment? This question activates the same neurological mechanism ROGERS used in therapy, the ability to relate to yourself with genuine curiosity, not judgment. But just creating a welcoming environment is not enough. You need the second step: automated congruence. ROGERS discovered that people only act consistently when there is alignment between who they are and what they do. When this congruence doesn't exist, every action becomes a draining, conscious effort. But when it does, actions flow naturally because they're aligned with identity. Most people try to change behaviors without changing identity. They see themselves as someone who's not disciplined trying to act like someone who is. This creates constant cognitive dissonance that drains mental energy. Discipline Subliminal works in the opposite direction. First, you align identity, then behaviors follow automatically. Here's how to do that practically. Identify a trait you already have that's connected to the behavior you want to develop. For example, if you want to build the habit of exercising, instead of focusing on the fact that you're not someone who exercises, identify something you already do that shows care for your body. It could be brushing your teeth, showering regularly, or choosing clothes that make you feel good. You already have the identity of someone who takes care of their body. Now you're just expanding that identity. The practical exercise is to create what I call an identity bridge. Every morning, before doing the activity that requires discipline, spend 2 minutes recalling concrete evidence that you are already the kind of person who does that kind of thing. If it's exercising, remember that you already walk to distant places when needed, that you've carried heavy things when necessary, that you've chosen stairs over elevators. If it's studying, remember that you've read entire books for pleasure, that you've learned complex things like driving or using technology, that you've taught something to someone. The goal is not to convince yourself of something false, but to recognize real capabilities you already have that connect with the new behavior. This creates a sense of congruence. You're not trying to become a different person, you're simply expressing more fully who you already are. But there's still a third crucial element most people ignore: how you talk to yourself during the process. ROGERS discovered that the quality of internal dialogue determines whether someone can sustain long-term change. And that brings us to the third step: empathetic feedback. The voice that comments on your actions in your head is probably the most powerful force influencing your discipline. For most people, that voice is critical, impatient, and punitive. When you make a mistake, it says things like, "You always do this, you'll never make it, you're weak, you don't have discipline." That voice isn't trying to help you. It's trying to protect you from the risk of trying and failing, keeping you in the comfort zone. ROGERS developed a revolutionary alternative: empathic listening applied to inner dialogue. Instead of judging or criticizing, you learn to relate to yourself with the same quality of attention that a skilled therapist offers: curious, non-judgmental, focused on understanding, not fixing. I'm going to teach you a specific protocol that transforms your inner critic into a guiding voice. Every time you notice that you made a mistake, procrastinated, or didn't follow your plan, instead of criticizing yourself, ask these 3 questions in this exact order. First question: what was going on with me when that happened? Don't look for excuses, look for understanding. Maybe you were tired, stressed, hungry, or dealing with a worry. Acknowledge the real context, not the idealized one where you're supposed to have infinite willpower. Second question: what was this part of me trying to protect or achieve? Even self-sabotaging behaviors usually have a positive intention at the unconscious level. Procrastination might be trying to protect you from the fear of not being good enough. Avoiding exercise might be trying to preserve energy for other demands in your life. Understand the intention behind the behavior. Third question: how can I honor that need in a way that also moves me closer to my goals? This is the question of integration. Instead of fighting the part of you that created the unwanted behavior, you find a way to meet the real need in a way more aligned with your goals. For example, if you procrastinated because you felt overwhelmed, instead of forcing yourself to work harder, You could honor the need for relief by taking 5 minutes to breathe deeply before returning to your task. If you skipped a workout because you were mentally exhausted, you could honor your need for rest by going for a gentle walk instead of doing an intense workout. This process transforms mistakes into useful information rather than evidence of inadequacy. And when you're no longer spending mental energy criticizing yourself, you have more energy available for the actions that actually matter. Now I'll show you how to integrate these 3 steps into a single system that works automatically. The key is to implement all 3 elements sequentially and allow each to reinforce the others. Start by modifying your environment using the unconditional acceptance techniques I described. Do this today, before going to bed. Remove the elements of judgment, add the elements of organic growth, and establish the empathic entry ritual. Tomorrow, when you enter that space, your unconscious mind will already register a difference. During the first week, focus only on strengthening this welcoming environment and practicing the entry ritual. Don't try to change any behavior yet. Just get your mind used to associating that space with acceptance and possibility, not pressure and tension. In the second week, add the automated congruence exercise. Start each session by recalling evidence that you already possess the qualities needed for the behavior you want to develop. Do this religiously for 7 days, even if it feels artificial at first. In the third week, once the first 2 elements are in place, introduce the empathic feedback protocol. Every time something doesn't go as planned, use the 3 questions I taught you. Don't skip this step. It's what transforms temporary failure into permanent growth. Starting in the 4th week, you'll notice something interesting. The behaviors that once required conscious discipline begin to happen with less effort. This isn't magic, it's neuroplasticity. You've reprogrammed the unconscious patterns that were creating resistance, and now they're working in your favor. But here's an important warning. Your mind will try to return to old patterns, especially in the first 30 days. Rogers called this resistance to growth. It's not that you don't want to change, it's that genuine change threatens the current structure of your identity, and your unconscious will do everything it can to maintain the status quo. When that happens, and it will, don't interpret it as failure. Interpret it as a sign that the process is working. Your mind only resists when it feels that something real is changing. Use the empathic feedback protocol I taught you. Be kind to yourself and keep implementing the 3 steps. Discipline Subliminal is not about forcing changes against your nature. It's about creating the conditions where change happens naturally because it aligns with who you really are. Rogers spent decades demonstrating that when we remove internal obstacles, people naturally move toward growth and fulfillment. You don't need to become a different person to have discipline. You just need to create the environment, the identity, and the inner dialogue that allow your natural growth tendency to express itself freely. And when that happens, discipline stops being a struggle and becomes a natural flow. Now I want you to do something for me. In the comments, tell me what was the most powerful insight you had while watching this video. Use the phrase, "Rogers made me realize that," and complete it with your discovery. I want to see how these concepts are resonating with different people and their specific situations. And if this video truly changed your perspective on discipline, save it to your favorites. In the next 30 days, as you implement these 3 steps, come back to this whenever you need to reconnect with the fundamentals. Discipline Subliminal is a process, not a one-time event, and having this content accessible will make the difference between temporary success and lasting transformation. Lastly, if you know someone stuck in self-sabotaging patterns, share this video with them. Sometimes the difference between someone staying stuck or breaking free from a destructive cycle is realizing the problem isn't a lack of willpower, but a lack of internal alignment. You could be the catalyst for someone's transformation. And if you want me to go deeper into any of these 3 steps in future videos, leave a comment asking specifically what you want to learn. If there's enough interest, I'll create content detailing variations for different areas of life and different personality types. You decide what you want to see here on the channel. The discipline you've always wanted isn't out of your reach. It's just waiting for the right conditions to emerge. And now, you know exactly how to create those conditions.